Then we'll discuss the link between ethics and professionalism. The central idea here is that any profession needs to build trust. So for a given profession to be successful, for example, the financial profession, that profession needs to have the trust of various stakeholders. And that trust is achieved through ethical behavior. So that is why trust is the cornerstone of a relationship that a given profession has with the different stakeholders. We'll talk about challenges to ethical conduct, and by understanding these challenges, investment managers or those who are involved in the investment profession can act more ethically. We'll talk about ethical standards versus legal standards, and the point here is to understand that while there will generally be an overlap between ethical and legal standards, but these two are different. So there might be activities that are legal but not ethical, there might be activities that are ethical that are not legal, and so on. The final segment of this reading will be on ethical decision-making frameworks. In other words, what frameworks can be used to come up with ethical decisions. We can understand the importance of ethical behavior by considering a real-world scenario. Now, let's say that you work for an investment management firm that has two departments, a research department and an investment banking department. You are here in the research department and you have several colleagues, including this one, and basically the research department evaluates different companies that are within the investment universe for this firm, and then you and your team write research reports related to these various companies. So you are researching a particular company and writing the research report, and your colleague over here is also researching a company, another company, and writing a research report on this other company. Now, you and your colleague over here have friends in the investment banking department, and it turns out that your colleague over here has a very close friend in the investment banking department, and this friend is trying to get some business from the same company for which your colleague is writing a research report. Now, your colleague is very ambitious. He wants to do well in this firm. He wants to impress senior management, and he wants to make his friend happy. So what this colleague does is he writes a favorable report for this company, even though he is not that confident about the future performance of this company. So the current financials indicate that the future isn't necessarily very bright, but in order to make this company happy so that this company gives investment banking business to your firm, your colleague writes a favorable report. Now, based on that favorable report, the business does come in and your colleague's friend is happy. So in the short term, things look good. But it turns out that based on this research report, several clients and prospective clients buy shares in this company. And then in a few months, the company stock comes down considerably. Now, obviously, those who bought shares in this company based on your colleague's report will be very concerned. And it turns out that they start writing their evaluations and they start giving feedback on various internet forums and various social media platforms. Because of that, your firm comes under scrutiny. And once your firm is scrutinized, the investment public realizes and recognizes that your firm sometimes writes reports that are misleading. So the reputation of your firm comes down, the trust that your firm has built over several decades comes down, and the firm also starts losing business. When the firm starts losing business, it starts downsizing, and among other people, you also lose your job. And obviously, you are extremely upset and perturbed because this wasn't really your fault, but you still lost your job. And what this scenario illustrates is the importance of trust in the investment profession. Once a company loses trust, then bad things happen for the company, for the clients of the company, and even for customers of the company. So basically, the central point is that trust is extremely important. And trust represents a strong belief in the reliability of a person or institution. The next question is, how can a company or an entity build trust? There are two attributes of an investment management firm that help build trust. One is that it should have transparent and open business practices, and the other is that it should have ethical business practices. So, as long as these two things are done consistently, that will allow an investment management firm to build trust. We should also recognize that ethical behavior goes well beyond following the law. There might be behavior that is, strictly speaking, legal, but might not be ethical. And this is something we'll talk about later in this reading. The word ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, which means character, guiding beliefs, or ideals. Ethical beliefs or moral principles are the beliefs that provide guidance for our behavior. So, for example, there will be guidance on what is acceptable, what is good, what should be done, as well as what is not acceptable and what should not be done. In almost all societies, examples of ethical behavior would include honesty, transparency, fairness or justice, diligence, and respect for the right of others. And then unethical behavior will be the opposite of any of this. Another way of looking at ethics has to do with the consequences of one's actions on others. So, from an ethical perspective, we need to be considerate of the direct or indirect consequences on others of the actions that we take. We would not want to do anything that has a negative impact on others. The CFA Institute combines these concepts in a statement over here that I would encourage you to learn. Ethical conduct is behavior that follows moral principles and balances self-interest with both the direct and indirect consequences of the behavior on others. Now, by others, we refer to various stakeholders. Stakeholders are groups of people or individuals who are impacted by our decisions. So we could have colleagues, clients, employers, communities at large, our profession, such as the investment profession, the overall trade association, regulators, and other financial market participants. Certain aspects of ethics are generally codified into laws and regulations. So, for example, being dishonest with clients will be against the law, but the specific laws and regulations will vary across different countries or jurisdictions. This is because the specific value systems might be somewhat different. So, for example, with respect to investment recommendations, in some countries the requirement might be that an investment manager should make recommendations which are suitable to potential clients, whereas in another country, the law might be that investment managers should make recommendations that are in the best interest of clients and prospective clients. So there is a subtle difference between these two requirements or these two laws, and these differences arise because of the difference in cultural values or the thought processes across different countries. While laws and regulations are based on different countries, we can have industry groups or associations that come up with a code of ethics for that particular group. The CFA Institute is a classic example. The CFA Institute represents investment managers all over the world. So the CFA Institute is not limited to a particular country. This body, the CFA Institute, has come up with a code of ethics that provides guiding principles for CFA Institute members all over the world. And then a codified form of the ethics in terms of what conduct is allowed, what is not allowed, what is recommended is in the standards of professional conduct. Now, this again will apply to all those who become members of the CFA Institute. The standards of conduct serve as a benchmark for the minimally acceptable behavior that is expected from the members of a given community. Moving now to ethics and professionalism. A profession is an occupational community. So, for example, a community of doctors, a community of lawyers, a community of accountants, or a community of investment managers, all these represent professions. Those who belong to a given profession are called professionals. Professionals have specialized knowledge and skills. So, obviously, doctors have a particular skill set and they have knowledge related to the medical profession. Lawyers have knowledge related to the law and skill set related to their profession. Similarly, accountants have a certain body of knowledge and the relevant skills. And the same holds true with investment management professionals. Generally, a profession has a stated mission to serve society. Professionals uphold high ethical standards. So, all these professions that we talk about make a commitment to uphold high ethical standards, and this helps them build trust with their clients and with society at large. And to take this one step further, professionals are subject to a combination of professional conduct rules and licensed status. So, for example, investment management professionals need to meet certain criteria, and those criteria have to do with meeting ethical values and then demonstrating knowledge and skills related to their profession. So, if these elements are met, then they receive licensed status. In the context of investment management, getting the CFA certification is an example of a licensed status. Similarly, doctors, lawyers, engineers have their own version of receiving licensed status, and that only happens when they meet certain criteria. Before moving on, I want to draw a distinction between a trade group and a profession. A trade group can represent a group of people with a similar vocation. So, for example, we might have a group of electricians that form a trade group. But with a profession, there is an ultimate objective to serve society. And also with a profession, there is a focus on a code of conduct or a focus on ethics that might not be so strong for a trade body. As mentioned before, a profession has to establish trust with its clients and with various stakeholders that the profession interacts with. The question now is, how is that trust established? And here are some basic points that are related to establishing trust. The first is normalizing practitioner behavior. So a profession will establish a code, a profession will establish several standards that need to be met, and these need to be in harmony with laws and regulations. And as we mentioned before, these code and standards might actually go beyond what is legally required. Professions provide a service to society. So, for example, clearly doctors are providing a certain service, lawyers are providing a certain service. Professionals have to maintain high entry standards. In other words, not everybody can become a doctor. Only if certain criteria is met can an individual refer to himself or herself as a doctor. And this helps build trust, because if anybody could easily become a doctor, then clearly trust in the medical profession would go down. Professionals need to possess a body of expert knowledge. So in the investment management context, the CFA Institute has a body of knowledge that we need to obviously internalize before we can call ourselves investment management professionals. It is important for professions to encourage and facilitate continuing education. Obviously, in any field, knowledge evolves, and those who belong to a particular profession need to stay up to date with the trends in their profession. Professional bodies need to monitor professional conduct. So, obviously, if a lawyer is behaving unethically, then the profession needs to take necessary action. We are familiar with what the CFA Institute does in terms of the Code of Professional Conduct. There is an entire process which indicates what needs to be done if there is a violation of the code and standards. Professions need to promote collegiality. So this means that there needs to be respect between members of a profession. Professional bodies also need to play the role of oversight bodies. This means that the professional body needs to ensure that members are acting in an appropriate manner. So, this connects with monitoring professional conduct. And finally, professions need to encourage the engagement of members. So, those who belong to a given profession need to work towards enhancing the reputation of that profession and encourage fellow members of that profession to grow both professionally and to maintain a high level of ethics. We need to recognize that professions are not static. Professions evolve over time as requirements, technologies, and standards change. So, if we take the medical profession, which has been around for many hundreds of years, obviously, as technology changes, as standards change, the medical profession evolves. There might be other professions that are relatively new. So, the investment management profession is relatively new compared to the medical profession. And professions can learn from each other. So, for example, as ethical standards are developed in the investment management profession, that can also feed the accounting profession. Similarly, developments in the accounting profession can also help the investment management profession evolve.